This is a Sports Radio Live podcast covering your world of sports. Bryan Houston's Sports Radio Live. It's weekdays at 3 on 99.3 Talk FM, the talk of East Texas.
David Smoke is going to be along to update us on his picks for the NFL playoffs. And at 5:10, Jamie Aaron, who was a part of a big reunion of the Breakthrough Boys, the 1971 Dallas Cowboys who won their first Super Bowl. But right now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us right now, one of my favorite authors, a longtime writer in the Dallas area, also did some radio, Jim Dent. How you doing, Jim?
Good, Brian. Good afternoon to you.
Thanks very much for doing this. I've been wanting to talk to you ever since I started doing this show back in August, and one of the reasons was because I just absolutely loved the Junction Boys, and you've become quite a prolific author here since you started deciding you wanted to write books.
Yeah, I got out of the newspaper business about 1990, went into radio, kind of like you, for about 5 years, gave that up. And my first book in 95 was on Jerry Jones, King of the Cowboys. I think I'm up to about 9 right now, and I think Courage Beyond the Game might be the best.
Well, okay, well, let's talk about that. Courage Beyond the Game, the Freddie Steinmark story came out back in the summertime, and one of the reasons we talk now is because, you know, so many people got gift cards for the Christmas holidays and are trying to figure out things to do with them, and this is a book people need to read.
Yeah, I think they do. Freddie Steinmark is so important to the University of Texas that the players there still tap his picture as they go down the tunnel on their way to the big game. It's
wow.
It's a story that's been around since 1969. Freddie Steinmark was an all-Southwest Conference safety who actually played the entire 10-game season, Brian, with cancer in his leg. And we all know about the big shootout against Arkansas. They won 15-14. And the day after, actually 2 days after the game, he finally fessed up to Darrell Royal that he had a major, major pain in his left leg. And it got pretty hairy after that.
Now, I understand that this could end up being a made-for-TV movie or possibly a big screen production.
I think we can forget the made-for-TV. I think we're going to go big screen. I think we're going to go this year. If not, in 2012, I think 2013, we've got Angelo Pizzo to write the screenplay.
Wow.
And as you maybe possibly know, he wrote Rudy and Hoosiers. And we're looking at some major directors. And, yeah, Brian, I think this is the new Bryan song. I think that Courage Beyond the Game is going to be the new Rudy. I think it's going to be the new Hoosiers. I think it's one of those inspirational stories, kind of like a book I wrote 5 years ago, by the way, 12 Mighty Orphans.
Yes.
Which I think, Brian, we're also going to see on the big screen, possibly this year, again, maybe next year.
When you started writing books, did you ever imagine you were going to end up with these kind of prospects where you could end up seeing these things, made into movies and stuff?
I got lucky with the Junction Boys because the Junction Boys ended up being such a great story. I mean, the book sold about 500,000 copies. ESPN picked it up, turned it into a pretty doggone good movie in 2002. And what I learned in the process from the Junction Boys is how to write a book that potentially could become a movie. You need certain elements. You need, I write these character-driven stories, and they're also inspirational. And I learned so much from the Junction Boys that, then came 12 Mighty Orphans, then came Courage Beyond the Game. that, I feel like I'm in a pretty good groove right now.
Well, you really are. Now, tell me how you decided that the Freddie Steinmark story was one that you would be interested in doing a book on. How do you select your material? You told me, I think, in a pre-interview that you had actually gone to the big shootout, so you obviously have some personal experience with this story.
Yeah, I was 17 years old, living in Little Rock, Arkansas, drove my 67 Camaro all the way to Fayetteville, about 180 miles. The roads were pretty bad back then, to see the game. And here was a guy who grew up in Arkansas, thought about playing football at Arkansas, saw the University of Texas football team, all of a sudden wanted to play for them, somehow ended up at SMU, and I just loved the Freddie story. I just loved the fact that this guy was so courageous. He played, Bryan, with that tumor in his leg for 10 games.
That's incredible.
In 1969. In fact, when they did the biopsy on his leg, and the cancer was right on the tip of the left thigh bone, they found out that about a half an inch of the bone was gone.
Wow.
I mean, he had played the entire season with just muscle, with that quad muscle. Now, when I tell audiences that story, I look into their eyes and I see the sadness and the pain. And there is sadness and pain in this story. But the great thing about Freddie Steinmark is that he lived his life the right way. He lived another 17 months. He remains a role model to everybody who's ever been around Texas football. I'm not just talking about UT, around Texas football. And they honor him with these two pictures in the tunnel. Every player at the University of Texas, as he goes into battle, touches one of Freddie's pictures, and then he takes Freddie's heart onto the field.
Wow.
And in 2006, the Rose Bowl, when Texas beat USC, Mac Brown took Freddie's picture on the road for the first time. Think about that.
That's pretty powerful.
Players leaving the locker room, touching Freddie, going out and beating USC. In fact, I think that may be the way we're going to open the movie.
Wow.
Is that you see that the Texas players horning, putting their long horns right on Freddie, walking out the dressing room, down the tunnel at the Rose Bowl, on their way to, probably the biggest victory in the history of the University of Texas. Freddie memory lives.
No kidding.
And that's what is the great part of this story.
When you do a book like this, first of all, how long did it take you to write the book?
Well, it took me this was a little bit longer because it was so detailed. Probably took me about a year to write the book. I normally do books in about 6 months. I mean, in just the writing process.
Sure. When you write about these folks, and obviously, you wrote about some very inspirational stories, going from Bear Bryant and the Junction Boys to the 12 Mighty Orphans and so forth. What do those books do to you? I mean, do they change you as a person when you get through with the project and you've spent a year working on these kind of characters? How do they impact you?
Do you remember the last scene of Seabiscuit, the movie?
Yes.
And the jockey is coming down the stretch, and Seabiscuit's going to win, and there's the voiceover. Everybody thought that we changed the horse, but actually the horse healed us.
Wow.
My books, and I've had some problems in my life, 12 Mighty Orphans actually was the book that healed me, because I get to come to understand a story. I get to understand the people. I get to be around them. I'm going to tell you something. Being around the University of Texas players from 68, 69, and 70 has just been a wonderful experience for me, because they were Darryl Royal coached. They were motivated. They were living life the right way. And Freddie was part of this. And they loved Freddie so much. So, yes, I am as affected by my stories as probably the readers are.
Jim Dent on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM. Can we talk about the project? We exchanged emails, and you'd mentioned that there was a possibility you might be working on something as we were getting ready to go down to New Orleans for the BCS championship game between LSU and Alabama. Are you free to talk about that?
Sure I am. I mean, my next two books, I don't know, Brian, I don't know in what order they're coming in. I'm going to do a book on Billy Cannon, back in 58 and 59 when LSU had a 16-game winning streak, and he had his great punt return against Ole Miss, Halloween night, 1959, called Glory Run. You also had the Chinese Bandit involved. It's a wonderful story. I don't know if that's coming next. It's coming in either 013 or 14. I'm also working on a book about the Big 33 when Texas played Pennsylvania for 4 years from 64 to 67. You had Bobby Lane as the coach. You had Super Bill Bradley from Palestine, just down the road from you.
Yes, sir. We've talked to him.
And this is an interesting story because this is the first time that any Texas high school football team had black players. And Super Bill Bradley and a guy named Jerry Levias became great friends during this entire process. And Super Bill came off the bench in 65 to throw 2 touchdown passes to Jerry Levias in the second half to avenge a 64 loss to Pennsylvania. It's a really cool story. I love it. One thing I love about it is I'm so tired of these stories about race where there is hate between white and black. This is a story back in the 60s where whites and blacks came together, and in fact, Jerry Levias named Super Bill Bradley, gave him the nickname the Blue-Eyed Soul Brother. So this one's got a lot of potential too. Those are my next 2 books. Exactly when they're coming out, I don't know, but look for them fairly soon.
Man, that sounds like great stuff. Now, as far as keeping up with sports now, after being a sports writer for so many years and doing the radio and stuff, do you really follow things like that anymore now, or are you pretty much consumed with the book writing?
No. I love sports today. There's no question. I've got a 60-inch television in my living room I'm looking at right now. I think I probably watched all 35 bowl games.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry to hear that.
I coached the Cowboys for 11 years.
Yeah.
So, I'm still involved with the Cowboys. I'm not sure that Jerry Jones and I still get along, thanks to King of the Cowboys. But, I love today's sports. In fact, my girlfriend and I, in a period of 1 year, went to a Super Bowl, of course, the one in Arlington.
Right.
We went to World Series games in back-to-back years, 3 World Series games, and we went to Game 4 of the NBA Finals between the Mavericks and Miami, and that's when the Mavericks kind of broke their back.
You just kind of living the dream now.
That kind of tells you I'm pretty involved.
You're living the dream. It's a good life right now for you, no question.
Oh, you know what? I love old sports, and people say to me all the time, you must be cynical about today's sports. Oh, no, I'm not. I think, especially if I were a youngster right now, I would be living the dream watching some of this stuff.
Is there a story out there? Is there a character or an athlete out there right now that particularly inspires you that you can think of right offhand?
Not Tebow.
Okay.
Right now, probably, you know who really inspires me right now?
Who's that?
It's not an athlete. It's Jim Harbaugh.
Okay.
I don't understand, Brian, how in the world he brought an awful football team all the way to the NFC Championship game. I do understand it. You know what it is?
What?
He inspires.
Obviously.
He loves his players. He's old school. He runs the ball. I love the San Francisco team. in a way, the San Francisco team reminds me of the team that beat the Cowboys in 1981 with the catch, Montana to Clark.
Yeah.
You know, they came out of nowhere. They play with a lot of guile and guts. Back then, it was Bill Walsh. It was more of that cerebral thing.
Right.
But I'm telling you, Jim Harbaugh has just done a magnificent job with San Francisco. And because where have they been the last 15 years?
Oh.
Nowhere.
And you know, you thought it might be Mike Singletary that would be the guy that would inspire them, but that turned out to be a flop, and Harbaugh's come in basically with the same team, and what he's done with Alex Smith is just unbelievable.
Well, what he did with Alex, he said, "You're my quarterback." Now, he may not be his quarterback for long, but he gave him confidence. But what Harbaugh, to me, really gave to the 49ers was this hard hat mentality.
Yep.
You know, you got to hit. I mean, if you're going to play in this league, you've got to hit. And that, to me, takes me back to my days. I started covering the Cowboys in 78 all the way through 90 when football was really football.
Yes.
So I'm pulling, you know what, I'm pulling for the old 49ers.
So if you're going to pick, do you think it's going to be a Harbaugh Bowl between the brothers?
I think that New England is going to get past Baltimore in a very high-scoring game.
Okay.
I think the total, I know you're bringing on Smokey for his pick, but I'm going to give you my totals pick on that game. It's 50. I think the total on that game is 50. Even though the Ravens are kind of stodgy, play great defense, and don't have a great quarterback, I think that game goes over.
Wow.
I think Brady wins that thing late in the fourth quarter, something like 38-35.
Boy, that is going to be a wild ball game if that happens.
Yeah, it's going to be wild for a Baltimore game.
Yeah,
and I
no
think
kidding.
that the 49ers win 28-24 with, who knows? Alex Smith's going to have to throw a touchdown pass again.
Well, if he has the same kind of finish he had against the Saints, they're going to go ahead and just canonize the guy.
What about that 40-yard touchdown?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it's just amazing that, you know, here's a guy, like I said, who was dead and done as far as his career is concerned, and he brings him back twice, you know, in the last 4 minutes of the ball game. And suddenly, you know, he's the second coming of Joe Montana. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that sparks novels.
I can assure you he is not Joe Montana.
No, I understand that.
But hey, let me tell you something interesting that a lot of people don't realize, remember. In 81, when Montana brought them back against the Cowboys,
yes,
you know, Jerry Rice was not on that team.
That's right.
I mean, he had Bill Ring and Linville Elliott in the backfield. And who the hell were those guys?
Oh, and Freddie Solomon, I think, was his main
and
receiver.
Freddie
and
Solomon
Dwight
was
Clark.
about as old as me right now. and Dwight Clark wasn't much faster than me.
No. It's an incredible story. It's incredible. Well, Jim, tell us again now, where can people find Courage Beyond the Game, the Freddie Steinmark story?
I would go on right now. If you've got a Barnes & Noble close or a Hastings, go buy it there.
Good deal.
But go on Amazon.com. For $15, you can get this book, and they'll give you free, I repeat, free, 2-day shipping.
Outstanding. Yeah, and then you can buy your other books while you're there, too.
You can buy your other books, too. You got that gift card, Barnes & Noble. You know, they should have discounted this book by now.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's everywhere.
Well,
I mean, I hate to brag, but the book is everywhere. But if you're looking for a really good price, go on Amazon.com.
Right. Hey, Jim, listen, we really do appreciate your time. Congratulations on your success. We'll look forward to seeing this thing become a movie. And I'm personally looking forward to the Billy Cannon LSU story someday when you get ready to write it.
I will let you know when it's coming out, and we'll talk about it a little more. Brian, I have really enjoyed this.
Thank you very much, Jim Dent. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Jim Dent, the author of Courage Beyond the Game, the Freddie Steinmark story. He's also written books like The Junction Boys, 12 Mighty Orphans. I mean, the guy just, everything he's written has just been spectacular, and they're all just tailor-made for movies.
How cool is that?
I mean, I love his stuff. And I used to love reading his stuff when he was writing for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, covering the Cowboys all those years, too. So, because he covered the Cowboys basically around the same time that I did. So, we were watching, Tom Landry's team. Right. Back in those days, right. So that's good stuff. So, by the way, let's introduce Mully. Mully is in today for Chuck McKinley. Nice to have you here, sir.
Hey, thank you.
And I understand you also are going to be taking care of the sports flashes today. Is that correct?
I am.
Would you like to do that now?
Sure.
Well, let's do a sports flash right now, and let's go to Mully.
This is a Sports Radio Live podcast covering your world of sports. Bryan Houston's Sports Radio Live. It's weekdays at 3 on 99.3 Talk FM, the talk of East Texas.